Hi, this is Marsha.
And this is Kelly.
We are the 2U's of 2U's Fiber Adventures. Thanks for stopping by.
You'll hear about knitting, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, and just about anything else we can think of as a way to play with string.
We blog and post show notes at 2usfiberadventures.com.
And we invite you to join our 2U's Fiber Adventures group on Ravelry. I'm 100 Projects.
And I am Better in Motion.
We're both on Instagram and Ravelry, and we look forward to meeting you there.
Enjoy the episode.
Hi, everyone. As you know, Marsha is on her trip to Scotland, and this is a bonus episode all about Scotland. She's going to talk a little bit about her trip a little later, but I thought I would take an opportunity at the beginning here to just tell you a little bit about my Argyle socks. After all, Argyle is a place in Scotland, and the Argyle sock pattern came, apparently, from what I've read. It has come from Killed Hose and the tartan of the Campbell clan. But I had a few questions from people. I've now finished the DK weight pair of socks, and those are on 51 stitches. That was the cast-on number for those. The Argyle pattern is something I got from the class, so I really can't share the design of it. But I think that once you have studied a few different Argyle designs, you could probably fit in, whatever your gauge is on the weight you want into the chart. And I'm going to share a chart with you that I made. And the chart that I made came from some patterns from a website called freevintageknitting.com. The website, freevintageknitting.com, has a lot of old patterns that are in the public domain. If you go to that website and then under pattern categories you select socks, you'll see, if you scroll down, it's kind of an odd website because the top part of it stays the same no matter which page you're on, so I was confused at first. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there are many, many sock patterns, and at the top, the very second one is Argyle socks, and that is one of the patterns that I am using. It's Argyle socks pattern number 373, and it was originally published in the Spool Cotton book, Socks and Mittens for the Family. And I don't remember what year that was published. Let me see if I can find that. 1941 is the original copyright date of this book. So these are socks from the 1940s. So that's one of the sock patterns that I looked at, and it had 4 colors. And then the other sock pattern that I was looking at is called Men's Argyle Socks Pattern, size 10 to 12. And it's from a book that was originally published as Sweaters, Gloves, Scarves, Socks for Men and Boys. And I think that one also is a similar vintage. So I got both of those patterns, and I was looking through them, hoping to find one that already had a chart. Unfortunately, neither one of these had a chart. But with the information that I had in the pattern, I went to a website which is really fun called Stitch Fiddle and set up how many stitches I wanted. I know I make 72 stitches around socks when I make socks for Robert. And so I made a 72 stitch wide template, and then I started drawing in my little Argyle pattern. And so I will share that Argyle pattern in the show notes and also on the Ravelry page and on my project page as well, so that people can see it. And please feel free to use it. It's just the chart. It doesn't give the instructions about how to do the knitting. But if you wanted a chart that goes along with these sock patterns, you can. I do have one thing different about my chart, and that is that I started my diamond with just one square at the very bottom of the first diamond instead of 2 as the pattern called for. And I'm not sure how that happened, but it's fine. It worked out nicely, and I'm not going to go back and change my chart. Both of these patterns, one was 70 stitches, the other one was 72. So I'm kind of combining them. The one that was 72 stitches only had 3 colors, and the one that had 70 stitches had 4 colors. So I just kind of mashed them together, and I did a 1x1 ribbing for about 4 inches for a cuff, and then I've started on my Argyle, and oh, it's so fun. Argyle in fingering weight is not as fast as Argyle in DK weight, but it really is nice. And again, these are knit flat, and when I did the ribbing, I was using my regular double points. I was, keeping the stitches on 2 double points and knitting with the third. Again, knitting flat because I wanted to use size 0 for the ribbing. And then once I got to the body of the sock, I moved up to size 1. And my size 1 needles, I did have a set of knitting pins. Those are very, very long. They look like double points, except that they're long as straight needles. So I think they were one of the types of needles that was originally used for this type of socks. So that's pretty exciting. I got to use vintage knitting pins along with my vintage pattern. So I'm pretty excited about those. And I just wanted to let people know about how that pattern works and where I got my chart, how I made it. Stitch Fiddle. If you just Google Stitch Fiddle, and again, I'll put a link in both the show notes and in the Ravelry group, and on my project page. Stitch Fiddle is so fun. You can use it to make charts, whether it's color charts or stitch charts. And there's a ton of inspiration there. I haven't even started to dig into that. I just got myself a little chart and started clicking boxes in to make them colors. You just select a color from the color palette and click in the box, and that fills the little square with the color. So fun. I felt like I was coloring in a coloring book. So I recommend Stitch Fiddle for making your chart. And again, I'll share mine so you can see, how you get started. And that's it with the Argyle socks. Oh, the other question that I got from somebody was about how you sew them up. And that there's an interesting stitch that you use. Instead of doing mattress stitch, what you're doing is each time you go across, you're going under the leg of a stitch on one side and under the leg of the stitch on the other side. And then you go up to the next stitch and you go under the leg from left to right, and then under both legs from right to left. And the stitch that you're looking for is the stitch that is not the very, very edge. It's the stitch that's the very edge, but it's the leg that's not on the edge. So if you think of on the left-hand side, let's say you have a stitch and it's in a V shape, and on the edge, it's hard to see that V shape, that side of the V shape, but it's there. That you don't use. That part that's hard to see, you don't use, which is good because it's hard to find it. So you're using like the outer leg of the stitch on the left and the outer leg of the stitch on the right. And when you thread your yarn underneath it, it snugs them both together and they look like a single stitch. It's really cool. It's a very nice technique. It's not bulky the way mattress stitch can be sort of bulky. And then there's another technique that one of the members, Marie, one of the members of the class that I was in, she was talking about a stitch that she described it and someone said, "Oh, you mean vertical Kitchener." Anyway, it turns out that's a sort of duplicate stitch that you do. I haven't looked it up and I haven't tried it, but that sounds very interesting too. The one I'm using is you take the 2 edges and you take those very, very last stitches. You take the outer leg of the V on one side, the outer leg of the V on the other side, and you thread your yarn under both of those. It works perfectly. It's pretty great. So that's all I have to say about the knitting of the Argyle socks. But I also had a question about the bobbins. The easy bobs that I'm using are great. Take a look at the pictures on my project page if you could not picture them from our description in the last episode. They're very hard to describe, but once you see them, you'll be like, oh, that's very interesting how that works. But the thing about the easy bobs, I can speak from experience. Our instructor Harry Wells, he said, fill them about 3/4 full. Don't fill them all the way. They'll become too heavy and they'll, pull down too far, because the bobbins actually hold the yarn and they don't fall down, but you can very easily, with a little bit of tension, pull a little more yarn out from the bobbin. Well, if you fill the bobbins too full, the weight of the yarn will put that little bit of tension on the bobbin, and your bobbin will unravel a little bit and be longer. The ones that you filled too heavy will be longer than all the rest, which will induce tangling. So I learned from experience. I wanted to put as much as possible on a bobbin, but 3/4 full is the right amount that makes it so they don't start to unroll themselves due to the weight. So I think those were the only questions that I saw. A question about how you get your chart, where the pattern came from, a question about how you sew them up, and a question about the bobbins. So feel free to get in touch with me either on Ravelry or by email, 2use@2usefiberadventures.com. If you have any other questions, I'm really happy to help other people do Argyle because I am having so much fun. It's an Argyle revolution. So also, if you have trouble finding patterns, again, let me just mention, freevintageknitting.com is a great website with a lot of vintage patterns on it. All right, everyone, I'll turn you over to Marsha. She is our foreign correspondent with 2 dispatches from Scotland.
Hi, this is Marsha, and I'm not recording with my usual partner, Kelly. I'm recording with Kim.
Hello, this is Kim.
Kim is KM Design on Ravelry.
Yes, I am.
Anyway, we are here in Scotland. We're in Edinburgh. Not Edinburgh or Edinburgh. Oh, it's Edinburgh.
Yes.
And we arrived on Saturday, and we thought we'd just talk a little bit about what we've been doing. So we're calling this dispatch number 1 from Scotland.
Lots of walking, that's for sure.
We've been walking now. It's about, it's about 11 o'clock at night, I think. And we are sitting on our beds tired because we walked pretty much all day the last 2 days. So should we start from the beginning?
Sure.
Our flight?
Our flight was very easy. We were both really happy that we upgraded to premium economy.
Yes.
Oh.
And it was a nice flight, and it seemed pretty quick, too, because our seats were so comfortable. And I can't say that about most flights I've been on recently, but it was very nice. And then our hotel. We got here probably about 7 o'clock on Saturday night, and we have checked into the Old Waverley Hotel. And it is an old hotel.
Yes.
We're calling it charming.
Yes.
But it meets our needs perfectly because the location is fantastic. We're right across the street from the Walter Scott Memorial, and the Waverley train station is right across the street. There's a tourist information kiosk also right across the street, and we're walking distance to
the castle.
Right, Edinburgh Castle and the Royal Mile and all kinds of sites. So, and pretty close to walking to nice restaurants. And anyway, so it's a great location. So let's talk about what we did the first day.
So the first day we got on the city tour.
Yes.
And there seemed to be something going on with the green tour, the one that was supposed to be short and along the Royal Mile. Oh, no, that was the red one.
The red one, yeah. We couldn't figure it out because it just went around in a circle.
Yes. We're like, okay, we're done.
We were following on the map, and we couldn't figure out where it was going because it went around in a circle. So we got off and got on the green bus, and that took us to Arthur's Seat, which is it's the old volcano, right?
It is the old volcano, and I think it's the highest point in the city.
So, and you cannot drive to the top, you have to hike to the top. So we went up,
a very muddy ledge.
Yes, because there had been, I think it was just even Monday of last week, they had very heavy snows, and the day we arrived, it was raining really hard. So the trail was very muddy, and still a little bit of snow and patches and ice.
And this was Sunday that we went hiking up to Arthur's Seat.
Right,
So
Sunday.
we arrived Saturday in the rain. Mm-hmm. And Sunday, there was a lot of little streams running down Arthur's Seat. It's a rock trail, but at the top there was an icy part. Yeah. And then we did some rock climbing. We're like, what the heck are we doing?
But we made it, and no serious injuries or anything.
Nope.
And well worth it, because when you get to the top, the views really are spectacular. It's a 360-degree view.
Yes.
So that was beautiful.
And it was a clear day.
Yes, yeah. And they have said that the weather patterns keep changing from minute to minute, and it really is true, because on the way up we could see that it was kind of foggy, then it would get kind of sunny and then a little foggy, but when we got up there it was beautiful views and clear. And then
we found the easy way down.
Yes.
Thank gosh.
So we found a way down that was just basically a grass. We just walked down these meadows kind of, and so no rocks and mud, and then we went on a walking and biking, running, jogging path back to the name of the palace, Holyrood.
Yes.
Holyrood Palace. And we're going to go back there. At that point, we were hungry.
Yes.
It was about 3:00 and we had not had lunch. So we got back on the green bus and we went to the Royal Mile, got off there, and had lunch at a tea shop, which was good.
Yeah. It was a tiny, charming little tea shop, like with enough seating for, 7 people.
Yeah.
It was super small.
Very small. We had a very interesting sandwich. It was cheese and it was goat cheese.
Goat cheese and pepper and mango chutney.
Yeah, very good. So we had that, and then we walked along the Royal Mile. Mm-hmm. And what did we do after that?
We looked in the woolen mill, and we were rather disappointed to see that it was just a closed shop.
Yes.
We were expecting something more.
We were looking for a real mill, but anyway, and then I think after that, didn't we just go back to the hotel and we got kind of changed our clothes and we went out to dinner?
Yes.
And we went to a place called the Abbotsford Pub. We had an excellent meal.
Yeah. We're finding that the restaurants on the second floors, not on the ground floor, to be really good.
Mm-hmm. There seems to be a lot of restaurants above pubs.
Yes. And
so Kim had a chicken pot pie and I had some sort of halibut dish, which was very good. And then we came back. Oh, I forgot. We came back to the hotel and we sat in the lounge.
You know what? That was a night of 2 times out for alcohol. We went to the Doric, too. What day did we go to the Doric?
Oh, we did that 2 days, and we did this. It's all the same day. It's all the same day. I forgot. When we were walking back from the Royal Mile, we saw a pub called the Doric. And, well, actually, it was right next door to another one, which looked really cool, but it was packed, and there was music playing. And that seemed too much for us at that point. So we went to the Doric. A nice guy behind the bar helped us pick out whiskey. So we had a whiskey there. Then we went home and changed and went and had dinner at the Abbotsford Pub. And then came back to our own hotel and sat in the bar, which is an interesting, charming little bar. It's a lounge, has a fireplace and these big sort of loungy chairs in it overlooking Princess Street, and then a little tiny bar.
Yes. But the light is bright in there, so we can knit.
Yeah. So we sat there and we knitted and had another whiskey. And then this morning we got up and we took care of a little business. We bought our train tickets to London for a week from...
First class.
Yes, and we
splurged.
We splurged and are going first class because they had a sale and first class was less expensive than coach.
Well, I think that it was, if we were going to go a half hour earlier and it was going to take a half hour longer, it was a discounted ticket.
Right.
And that if we wanted to go in 4.5 hours, it was going to be much more expensive.
Right.
But the irony is that we'll arrive at the same time.
Right, because the one that's 4 hours faster, it's the one that's a half hour faster leaves a half hour later.
Correct. So we're going to get the same time.
Yes. And
we get to go to first class and cheap first class.
Yeah.
And sit on the train for 5 hours instead of 4.5.
Yeah. Anyway, so we booked that, and then we were trying to figure out how to take we also bought our passes for the bus system.
Our ride card.
Yes. And so we did that, and then we were going to take the bus up to Edinburgh Castle. but we discovered the bus doesn't go up there.
So we had to walk.
So we had to walk up there. So we spent most of the morning, it was 2.5 hours probably, walking all around there. It was very cold. We walked around there, and then we did go and have lunch in the tea room.
And it was amazing sights from the ramparts of Edinburgh Castle. Yeah. It was not as nice and clear a day today as it was on Sunday. Today seemed to be the theme of dogs.
Yes, there's more on that. But, yeah, it was interesting. They have a dog cemetery at the castle, and we went through the museum that shows all of the regimental, what's the name of the regiment? It's the Grey.
The Grey Friars, and then there were 3 famous regiments of Scotland that if you hear the names, I want to say Caledonian, but I don't think that's right.
It seems like it was 3 days ago that we did that, right? Because it's been a long day. Anyway, but it was beautiful. Really enjoyed that. And then we left the castle and we started walking down the street. And of course, there was I wrote down the name of it. It's the tartan weaving mill, which is a big tourist attraction. But it was actually kind of interesting. We went down there in the basement on the very lowest level. They actually have the looms that you can see where they weave the tartans. And I'm not clear. They said it's the only working mill left in Edinburgh, but I didn't see any, but it didn't look like they'd been used for a while.
Yeah, they looked pretty dusty.
Yeah, and then, but there were some people there who were sewing kilts.
Yes.
And so we looked around there, and then...
You got a really great knapsack.
Yes, I did not plan ahead, and really what I needed was a backpack to carry my water bottle in and things. So we found this really cute collapsible backpack with thistles on it.
Yeah.
So I bought that, and then we went across the street to, and we're calling this the Walt Disney Scotch Whisky Experience. But it's the Scotch Whisky Experience, and the reason we're calling it Walt Disney is you go in there, and then there actually is a ride. They put you in a barrel, a whiskey barrel, and you go around. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean,
yes,
sort of.
Exactly.
Except you're in a whiskey barrel, and you're learning about it's though you're in the middle of the process of making whiskey, and but it was actually, for as kind of cheesy and corny as it was,
it's really well done,
very well done, and very informative.
Yes.
So we actually learned quite a bit, and then we also bought the gold package, which meant we got 5. A sampling of 5 different whiskeys. So we had the first one with the big group, and then we went into the bar area. Most people left because I think we were the only ones that got that.
I think there were 2 others.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then we sat, and we were there for another hour probably because we had the 4 more whiskeys to taste. And the gentleman who had led the tour, he came over and talked to us a little bit about, whiskey. And so that was nice. Then after that, what did we do? Oh, yes. It came highly recommended that we go to Armstrong's. I don't know what the rest of the name of it, but it's
vintage clothing.
Vintage clothing. It's basically a thrift store of vintage clothing. They had racks of kilts and an entire rack of Irish hand-knit sweaters and everything. But it was...
Smelly.
I would say Kim and I walked in, sniffed, turned around and walked out. We decided it's not our store. So, yeah.
It had that used clothing body odor to it. It's not pleasant at all.
No, we don't, it may be for some people, but it's not for us. So.
And it had very well-priced kilts. So there were men in there shopping for kilts. Probably tourist men, but they were there.
And the Irish sweaters, hand-knit Irish sweaters, were about 12 pounds.
Yeah.
Which is what? $18 approximately?
Yeah.
Under 20?
I mean, the irony, I remember buying one of those in the 80s. I'm sure it was a lot more than that.
Yeah, I think I bought one and they were expensive. But anyway, so that's, it may be some people's taste, but it was not our taste. After that, we walked over to George Street, and then this was more our style. And, Kim, how do you pronounce this? The store's Brora?
Yeah, Brora. R-O-A. Brora.
And it's they have very nice cashmeres, sweaters,
linens, and silks.
Silks, and a lot of Liberty prints.
Yeah. And the palette of the clothing is all very similar. So if you buy a sweater, then there's a whole set of either dresses or blouses that go with it.
Yeah, so that was a very nice store. Should we say what we bought?
We each bought a cashmere sweater. I bought a beautiful pullover one with a nice open hemline that the back is a little bit longer than the front. And it has a different color cuff on the sleeves. Yeah. For about an 8-inch is a light or dark blue, and the rest of it is a burgundy color.
Yeah. And my sweater is kind of long. It's sort of mid-thigh, probably. Sort of an open, drapey sweater. The same color, though, right? Yeah. Is yours the same maroon, burgundy color?
Yeah.
It doesn't have the contrasting bands on it. It's just all the same color. But I put that thing on, and I think I said to Kim, I think I'm in love.
It's so beautiful.
So it had to come home. So it's in a bag here. We're looking at the bag sitting in our... I have to say something about our room, too. The room has a bay window, and...
It's the turret of the building.
Yes, and you step up 2 steps. There's like a platform in the bay window, and you step up these 2 steps, and then there's a chair and a table up there. It's I've never seen anything like this in a room. It's like you're on a little throne or something.
Yes. And you have a beautiful turret with 4 windows, and they're curved windows.
Yeah.
And then there's a ledge, but the windows don't open.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see what's called the rocket, which is Sir Walter Scott's memorial, directly out our window.
Yeah.
You can see it from everywhere in the city, too, so we know where we are.
Yeah, we always know where our hotel is because of the rocket. What did we do after? We came home, but came back to the hotel and changed our shoes. That was the big...
We didn't talk about the cookie.
Oh, the cookie.
The dog theme.
Yes, our dog theme today is... we talked about the pet cemetery at the castle, but then also at the castle when we had lunch, we had a shortbread cookie that was shaped like a dog, and it was called, the waiter kept on saying, it's Wallace the dog.
Yeah, he said, do you want the supreme shortbread or Wallace the dog shortbread?
And you're like, well, I want the one that looks like the little animal. He said, that's Wallace the dog. Okay, well, Wallace the dog. So we've been Googling Wallace the dog, and we can't figure out who Wallace the dog is. We think it might be a character...
In Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, Wallace, but we thought Gromit was the dog and Wallace was the man. And then we also, at dinner tonight, you found Wallace a pit bull?
Yes.
And so he might be somebody in Scotland.
Like social media or some popular culture.
Yeah, something that we don't
Wallace the pit bull.
Yeah. Anyway.
And it did kind of look like the cookie.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we had the... Wallace the cookie, shortbread cookie.
Yeah.
And then for dinner tonight, we went to a restaurant called The Dogs.
Yeah, The Dogs. And it was a really fun restaurant. And again, they didn't have a pub on the ground floor, but it was up on the second floor. And there was a sign saying The Dogs, so we knew that was a restaurant, but we kind of had that moment of sort of walking in there like, are we supposed to be in here? But then we could hear people upstairs. And really, really nice meal.
Well, and they had dogs at on the way up the stairs.
2 stone dogs, and then dog paintings, dog statues, and then the restaurant, kind of charming. It had wall sconces on the walls, had a very interesting mirror. Each table had a candle. Some were tall candlesticks, maybe 18 inches high. And then some, like we had a little short candle, which then burned out, and they came and put another one, which was just like a votive candle sitting on a little stand. Somebody had a candle in a bowl.
Yeah.
And then for dinner we had a beer.
Yeah.
Which was okay.
Pale ale.
We decided we can't have pale ales anymore. We have to move off of that because they're a little insipid, kind of, right? And then, but we had fish and chips, which were very good. And...
mushy peas,
and fish, and then the chips.
Yeah,
and the whole thing was very good. For fish and chips, I am not a huge fan, but here we had to try them, and they were good. And then we had that tart.
The tart was amazing.
And it was, it sounds weird, but it was a pastry dough that had roasted beets.
Spring onions.
Yeah, spring onions. It had red onions that were roasted.
Arugula. And then Swiss chard.
Swiss chard and goat cheese.
Yes.
And then maybe something else, but it had a really good, it was sort of sweet and savory at the same time. Like the onions, because they were roasted and the beets were roasted, it was kind of had the sweetness to it. It was very good.
And then the best was the dessert.
Yes, and we ordered rice pudding with whiskey sauce, and it came in a bowl. And we decided, well, Kim didn't think this, I don't think, but I thought it was probably the ugliest thing I've ever seen. It was very unattractive. But, oh my gosh, it was good.
Yeah. Amazing rice. And it was like creme what is it?
Like creme brulee.
Creme brulee. And it had a little bit of a hard crust that had whiskey and sugar. Mm-hmm. And then just really creamy rice pudding.
It was really good. Yeah. Very nice. So that was kind of our day. I have something else to say about the hotel, too. And we've never stayed in a hotel like this that has that phone.
The handy phone.
So, yes, the hotel, there's a cell phone that just charges on a dock, and then you can take it with you during the day, so we're not having to use our own phones.
So it's free internet and free phone calls. Mm-hmm. And what's great is we're using it to find our way through the city. We just go into Google Maps, put in our location where we want to go, and it tells us how to get there.
And we downloaded the app for the Edinburgh, I can't remember now what it's called, but it's basically the bus system.
Yeah, Transit for Edinburgh.
Right, and we downloaded that app, and we've not taken the bus yet, but we're going to do it tomorrow. Yes. We're going to go to see the Britannia. We'll use the bus then, but it's kind of cool because you can just say, this is where I am and this is where I want to go, and it'll tell you which bus to take and where to find the bus. And so I've never stayed at a hotel that offered that, and
it's great. It's saving us so much time.
Oh, yeah. And just the expense
of our
phones. Yeah. So that's our first 2 days. So this is dispatch number 1 from Edinburgh, and we'll record again.
It's been fun.
Yeah. Bye. Okay, well, it's Marsha and Kim. We're on day 4 of our trip.
Yes, day 4.
Day 4. So we took a day off from recording, so we're going to let you know what we did yesterday. Day 3, which was March 13th.
We went out to the Britannia.
Yes. So Queen Elizabeth's former, the Royal Yacht. And that was great. We took the bus out there. That was the first day we've taken the bus, I think, wasn't it?
It was the first day on our Rider Card Pass.
So we went out there, and I will say it's a little odd.
It is.
That it's in a mall.
Second floor of the mall.
Yes.
Not the ground floor. Ground floors are 0. First floors are 1. And then the next floor up.
Yeah. So it's weird. You go through a mall to get to the Britannia.
Yes.
So anyway, but we took a tour of it, and it's very interesting. I was really struck by how simple the interiors are. I mean, they're grand. I mean, it's a beautiful ship, nice spaces and large, but, the formal sitting room is large.
And the formal dining room.
And the dining room are large. But Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip's bedrooms are small.
Modest.
Very modest. Very small twin beds in each room. And modestly decorated.
Yes. And then in the back of the ship, the sunroom was very casual and comfortable. It was furnished like a country home. Mm-hmm. So nothing was pretentious or over the top. Everything was just subtle and classic. Wonderful floral patterns, William Morris floral patterns on a lot of the slipcovers of the furniture.
And then just sort of odd 50s furniture in there too, thrown in, and some interesting wicker furniture that they picked up in China, I think. Was that where they?
I think so, or Singapore.
Singapore, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was really interesting to see, and then it was fun to see the cruise quarters the cruise quarters and their mess hall, and also the officers' area where they would dine and also gather. And we noticed that every one of those rooms had a bar in it.
Yes. We counted the bars. Weren't there 5?
I think there were 5. Yeah.
3 for the crew.
And 2 for the royal family. Yeah, so that was really interesting. It was fun. And then it was also really nice, too, because they had all sorts of very informal portraits of the royal family.
Everywhere,
yeah. And a lot of them in the crew's quarters and signed. And then you learned all about all the traditions that they had. Like they had a wooden monkey that they would hide all over the ship.
And was it a wombat or something that they would toss back and forth to each other?
Yes, there was a wombat that they would put up in the ceiling fan.
Yes.
And then turn the fan on and it would fly. Then they would hit it. And so they had all these. It was funny. So we did that. And then we had lunch at a very nice restaurant called The Granary. Yes. And that was good.
It was so comfortable because we could sit. We did a lot of our research for our trip and very leisurely lunch.
Yeah.
It was in Leaf.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Keith, but with an L.
Yeah. Then, we sat at the restaurant. We booked our car, our rental car, and we booked
our hotel. The last 2 days of our hotel.
Yes, the last 2 days of our hotel. So we've got that booked. And that was an interesting thing, too. We should just comment about the car rental. It was less expensive to go through the Alaska Airlines website.
Yeah, with my Mileage Plus number than to book anywhere through any company online through the Edinburgh airport.
Yeah. So, that was
substantial, like $100 less.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty significant. So, anyway, we, and then after lunch, we went to find Ginger Twist, the yarn shop, and we found it. But it was closed because it was a Tuesday. But she was in the shop.
She was.
And so she came out. She was all apologetic that she's closed, and that she was actually going to be closed Wednesday because she was setting up. She's going to have a booth at the festival. So we'll shop her booth at the festival, and then I think that she's going to be open on the weekend. I think is what she said. So we're going to go back, and then I had also looked up to see what other shops were around, and in the neighborhood was another one. And we've been debating this. We don't know how to pronounce the name of the shop. We think it's McCree's, but we're not sure. It's MC and then capital AREE and Sons. Mm-hmm. And they were very nice in there. The several women were in there working, and they were showing us some of the Scottish wools, and they had a linen too. So we looked at those.
Well, and we really understood the difference between Jameson's and Jameson's and Smith.
Yes.
Which we don't have Jameson's and Smith in the U.S. anymore.
Yeah.
We have Jameson's. And they're both Shetland jumper weight yarns.
Yes, and they were funny because they said they're both the same type of yarn. The companies are similar names. They're both on Shetland Island, but they're completely unrelated.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was nice. They're going to have a booth too at the wool festival. They said, and they're not going to be having any wool. They're just going to have needles.
Yeah, they said that there's so many indie dyers and indie producers that their best role was that of selling accessories and needles.
Yeah,
and we did look carefully at something neither of us had seen. It was the Rowan denim lace.
Yeah, and that was really so. It's made out of recycled jeans, and we I think both of us sort of thought about it, buying some, but we couldn't figure out what we would make with the cotton lace.
Yeah.
It would have. Kim thought probably combine it with something else,
like Rowan lace, which is I think alpaca and merino, and I did a scarf out of that. It's very fine yarn, so. It's a lot of knitting.
Yeah. And then after that, I think we went back to the hotel, didn't we? And we laid on the bed.
Tried to stay awake.
Yeah, we laid on our beds, and we were a little exhausted from all the walking we've been doing. And then we got cleaned up and put on our best.
We did.
Our Sunday best. And went up to the Royal Mile where there's a restaurant called The Witchery.
And up is really up. We went up a huge set of stairs and then a steeper road because it's within a block of the Edinburgh Castle. Yeah. So we're down Princess Street, which is kind of the lowlands. And that was in Old Town. And up was seriously like a block of stairs and then like a sharp turn alley-like hill up to right in front of the witchery.
Pretty much straight up.
Yeah.
And it, but I think, Kim, we're getting in better shape.
We are.
Because we were not quite so winded last night. And then also today we've been taking the stairs.
Up to the 5th floor.
Up to the 5th floor of the hotel where our room is instead of taking the elevator. And I do think we're getting better at it. But anyway, we need to talk about the witchery.
Yes.
So it's an old restaurant. And on the back of the menu had the whole history of this building. But it's old, from 1593, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's been a restaurant for the last 40 years. And it's called the Witchery because they would actually burn witches outside that, in the courtyard on that street in front of that building. And so they decided to name it the Witchery because of that. And it's over-the-top decoration inside. It's also a hotel. There's 9 rooms available. That, again, are over-the-top decorated with, the walls.
Well, the wood paneling on the walls, and every table has this gorgeous candlestick.
A gorgeous brass candlestick, yeah.
And some have flowers, and they had a huge gold platter about 4 feet in diameter.
Yeah, that was hanging on one of the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And there's paneling everywhere. There's drapes hanging down and interesting light fixtures right above our table. There's one that had all sorts of flowers on it. It was like a brass, like a wall sconce kind of.
Yes.
And then the food was very good.
Yes. The oysters from Oban.
Yeah, well,
amazing.
We had ordered oysters on the half shell, and those were delicious. And then we had the 3-course dinner that they offer. Mm-hmm. You had we were laughing because Kim had the scallop.
I said, I'll get the scallops. And the fellow said, that would be a scallop? Singular?
Singular.
Okay.
And I had because I wanted to try this, I had the rabbit terrine.
It was really good.
It was very good. It was like pieces, very sort of rustic. So large pieces of the rabbit and carrot.
And glazed carrot?
Well, it was in a terrine, and then they had put an aspic in it to sort of hold it together, and then you had a slice of that with a sauce and candied carrots on top. They were little teeny tiny baby carrots, so small they were maybe 1/4 of an inch in diameter, but they still had little bits of the top on them, but they'd been candied, so they were kind of like anything candied. Candied fruit, kind of like chewy, kind of, very interesting and unusual. And a little bit of lettuce with it. So it was nice. And then for dinner, we both had the salmon. And it was, what else was with the salmon? It was
just a little bit of spinach and, it was the lobster beignet.
Oh, yes, a lobster beignet. And then we also ordered the broccoli with hazelnut butter and
portobello mushrooms.
Yeah, braised portobello mushrooms, which were delicious. And we had bread, which was also very good. It was kind of like a rye bread or something, I think.
Well, we got 2 different ones. The first one was like a bread with sage and maybe like a pimento or something. It was hard to decide. We couldn't figure out what it was. And then the second round of bread, because it was so good, was more like a rye bread.
Yeah. Oh, and we should say, too, we started off with a glass of champagne.
Oh, yes.
And then with our meal, we had a glass of white wine. And then we moved on to dessert. And we each had a coffee. And Kim had a chocolate. How would you describe it?
It was a beetroot double chocolate cake on a bed of very, sour cream, not super sweet cream. And then little gentle dollops of a citrus or a berry. Like a coulis. It was just, and so is really...
Coulis, I think it's
coulis, yeah.
Yeah, like a little raspberry sauce or a lemon sauce. And then I had a pear tart or galette or something, and that was very good with a caramel sauce. And then also they brought us when our coffee arrived with the sugar, a huge bowl of sugar. We also got 2 little shortbreads and 2 pieces of fudge. And so it was a really nice meal. And we liked it so much we're going back for lunch on Sunday.
And we're going to the Secret Garden. So the Witchery has 2 dining rooms. And we went to the main dining room for dinner, which was dark and,
Tiny. It's small. How many people can fit in there?
Less than 50.
Yeah, I would say like maybe 30 people or something.
Yeah.
It's very small. And so Sunday we're going to go back and have lunch at the, what'd you call it again?
Secret Garden.
The Secret Garden, yeah. So that was very nice. And then we kind of rolled down the hill to go back to the hotel.
It was not painful to roll down the hill.
No, we were, yeah. Well, and we should say, too, because we had a whiskey before on our way home from, didn't we have a whiskey someplace?
Wasn't that our Edinburgh?
Oh, that's right.
Had that out of the mouth.
That's right. I posted a picture of it on Instagram, but when we had gone to the whiskey experience, Kim bought a little small bottle of Edinburgh Caledonia. And so we only have plastic water glasses here, so we drank it out of teacups. So we had that while we were laying on our beds in the hotel room before we went to dinner. So
probably while we were sleepy.
Yeah, anyway. So, but then today we got up and we went to Holyrood Palace and took a tour of the palace, and we took a tour we saw the Abbey, which was very interesting. It's in ruins, but I thought that was really interesting, the Abbey.
It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Because isn't it from like 1162? So, I mean, really ancient, fascinating. It was built at 2 different times because some of the windows were rounded and some of the windows were pointed. And there was no roof.
Yeah.
It had been destroyed in the 1600s by, I think, an Irish rebellion.
Anti-Catholic rebellion.
Okay.
Yeah. I do remember that. When we were walking around, we don't actually have a tour, but all of these places we've toured, you have like a recording.
Yeah, an audio set that you just keep pressing the number of the room, and it gives you the history of that.
Yeah. So we did that, and then also in the price of the ticket was then we took a tour of the Queen's Gallery, and the show that was in there was the Prince of Wales had traveled to India in 1850s, was it, I think?
Yeah,
we shouldn't say the date because we don't remember exactly. But he had gone to India, and this was a show of all of the pieces that he brought back from India.
He received as gifts when he was in India. And so a lot of the heads of certain regions of India wanted to let him know about the region's craftsmen and their special skills that they had in gold and enamel and just metalwork, lots of swords. It was pretty amazing.
And there's one piece that stood out for me, and that was the knife that had in the blade of the knife was hollow, but was sort of like if you can imagine, sort of like a glass window. And so it had like this line running the length of the blade, and in it were little pearls, little seed pearls that would move, like they were loose. They would move through there. And the cool thing about that audio guide is there weren't very many items in the collection. There was only maybe 15 or 16, 17 items, but they were numbered, and then you could just click on that number with a picture, and then you would get not only the audio guide, or an audio description of what you were seeing, but in some cases you even got a video.
And they would show you close-ups of the item.
And so they actually, with this knife, they showed how the pearls were put into that blade and how they actually can take them out. So the knife comes apart, there's sort of an opening so you can take out those pearls. And the other piece I thought was really interesting was the perfume holder.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the peacock, but I'll talk about that.
Oh, you can talk about the peacock, because, well, they were all really interesting, but the perfume holder I thought was really interesting, too, because it kind of reminded me of a Fabergé egg, and that it was on a platter, and then kind of an egg shape. It actually was like a blossom, like a lotus blossom, that then would open up, and the perfume of the little pot that held the perfume would then rise up. That was beautiful. And again, it was fun because this audio guide had a video of how this would work. So that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was the peacock, too.
There was a peacock inkwell that had, I think, 19 movable pieces. So it had the quills, and it had places for the ink, and it had sharpeners and a scissors, and this whole... It was a boat that had a peacock on the stern of the boat, and it all could come apart so that you could use it for writing and then put it all back together and have it as one unit that you had everything you needed for writing. And the colors of the enamel were extraordinary, and the workmanship and how everything fit together was gorgeous. And then the audio guide gave you, a close-up of everything being separated and then being put back together. And then the other piece that I thought was interesting is that they had something that was gold, and it looked like a koi fish, and it was a tube, and you could put in eye makeup in it to then take out something and use it to do the eyeliners that are so common that you see in India. But it was a beautiful gold piece that looked like a koi fish. Yeah.
That was actually it was a really interesting exhibit. I thought that was great. So, and then what did we do after that? Oh, lunch.
Yes, at the cafe.
The cafe at the palace.
Yeah.
And
then we went across the street to the Parliament. To the Scottish Parliament.
Oh, yes. And that's a very contemporary, modern building.
So it's fascinating. It's next to Holyrood, which is from 1160s. And then you go across the street, and this was built in like 2009, and it's ultra modern. And ultra modern grounds, and wood, and concrete, and glass. And I don't remember I think it was an architect from Barcelona, actually.
I think so. But even though it's made with, like, the walls are concrete, it feels really warm because there's so much wood in the building. And then, like, the main entrance when you come in, there's, like, that hallway that's the ceiling is arched, and it has crosses sort of imprinted in it, into the concrete. Like, they must have put something in there to pour the concrete around. The other thing is that there's all the shapes in the building are symbolic. And, like, there's this one thing that looks sort of like you look at it and think, is it supposed to be a bottle, or is it supposed to be a paddle or something? And it's actually supposed to be a person. And sort of leaf shapes and these cross shapes. And so that was really interesting.
Well, and we got tickets to go hear the people on the floor of the Parliament. The members of Parliament were speaking. And so we could go in. And what I thought was really interesting is against one wall, which was the back wall of the Parliament, where everybody looked toward our Speaker of the House. And they had the paddle symbol kind of thing that looked like the people, and it was like the people were watching the members of Parliament, and then the lights had the same symbol that looked down on them, and so it's just very symbolic and interesting and super comfortable, and they were so kind to us. And it's like, oh, and by the way, we do have some visitor passes. Would you like to go? And we're like, sure. So they were fun.
So we got to sit in the gallery and listen to a discussion on the benefits of sports to the Commonwealth.
Yes.
And the other thing, too, is everybody's seats, they have they have a microphone and lights and everything, but they also, they lift up this, a piece of the desk, which becomes the...
lectern, I think is what it's called.
Or like the podium or something that they can put their papers on. And that's also sort of how they indicate that they want to speak as they put that up. So that was interesting. And it's even though it is sort of glass and concrete, because there's a lot of wood, and all of the chairs for the visitors and the chairs for the government
members of
Parliament, they're wood, but they're kind of that blonde kind of wood, really light color. It's really a good-looking building.
Well, and I think that a lot of the roof line had skylights, and the inside walls had lights from outside, like skylights. So there was just a lot of natural light that could come into the chambers.
Yeah, it was interesting. And then we went into the gift shop, and discovered that, and this is really cool, is they have their own beehives.
Yes.
Yeah. They
Up on their roofs.
Yeah. No, they're out in the gardens, aren't they?
I think their gardens might be on their roof.
Oh, really? Okay, because I know we couldn't see them. We have to take a tour to see the gardens. But that's really cool that the Houses of Parliament have their own beehives. So that was cool. And then, what did we do after that? Oh, we...
Georgian House.
Yeah, so then we took the bus back across town, sort of the other side of town, and we went to Georgian House, which is on... what's the name of it?
Charlotte Square.
Charlotte Square. Mm-hmm. And these were our Georgian-style houses that very upper-middle-class people would have lived in. And so we took a tour. You start on the top floor, and you work your way down to see all the different parlors, the dining room, one bedroom, all the way down to see the kitchen and servants' quarters. Very interesting building. They've done a lot of restoration work on it. There's a history of all the different people who had owned the house. A couple things stood out for us, though.
I thought the carpets were fantastic. Mm-hmm. So they had gone and to the people who had made the carpets in the first place and shown them pictures, and the makers of those carpets still had all of the specifications. So they redid the carpets in two of the rooms, one in the bedroom on the main floor, and then one in the promenade room or the drawing room upstairs where the women would retire to after dinner.
Well, and they did the one in the dining room, too.
Oh, I didn't know they did the one.
I think they did the one in the dining room.
So what was really neat is that these carpets were really bright, because we usually see carpets that are so faded and old, but these are like they would have been when they were new, when purchased for the house. So it was just really a breath of fresh air, and to see them in natural light really brought the house up a few notches in what the feeling must have felt like.
Yeah, it was very nice. And then in the one of the parlors, they had the box with the paper.
With the scrolled paper that's just, they were the tea boxes. Mm-hmm. And they were decorated with this tightly wound paper that was all different colors and made up like flowers and leaves and...
Yeah, so like the paper would have been rolled up, and then they would just sort of loosen it a little bit to make these spirals, kind of. So that was really interesting. The dining room table was interesting, too, how they had because they had the table set as though it was a formal dinner. And the docent that was in the dining room said, well, all these rooms you go in, they would just hand you like information you could read about the room, but they all wanted to talk.
Yes.
And so in the dining room, she was very talkative. I think it was the first time she'd been in the dining room, the first time she'd been a docent in the dining room, and so she was really excited about explaining everything to us. So that was really fun to see that dining room and about how they ate their food and the order that they ate the food and how they ate it. That the men, they had these very broad. The blade of the knives were quite broad with sort of a rounded sort of bulbous tip on the end, because it was considered good etiquette to actually cut your meat and your food and put it on the tip of your knife and eat it off the tip of your knife. And then she said the Victorians said that was
gauche,
yeah. Anyway, but then what was really excited, and I took a picture of this and I posted it on Instagram, and this is for Kelly, but in the bedroom was a spinning wheel.
Yes.
And tiny little spinning wheel, quite tall, but tiny. The bobbins were I'm thinking maybe 3 inches long or 2 inches long, very small. And they were not sure what they would have spun on that.
I think she said it was flax.
Is that, well, that's what
a linen, and it was done really finely, because they had 2 linen towels that they thought had been spun, but they would then have to have been woven. So I don't know how that
So because it is small, I suspect it was flax.
Yeah.
Because it was so small.
It was so elegant, too.
Yeah. And all that, this is for Kelly, because she loves all that wood that's turned, those little highly intricate, delicate little twisty, turny little pieces of wood. So that was, I took a picture of that for her. The kitchen was very interesting. There are 3 places to cook.
Yes. There was actually
more 4.
Than that. So you had the stove like one would expect with I think there were 6 pans on top of it, and then a fireplace with a fascinated heat there was a fan that made the gears go around.
I had like a rotisserie, yeah.
Spit. And so the heat of the fireplace would make the fan go around, and then the rotisserie would go around.
Right.
So you didn't have to pay somebody to stand there and gently make it go around. It would be automatic because of the heat of the fireplace.
Because the docent was down there. There was this older gentleman. He said that they usually had to have a small boy that would have to keep the spit or the rotisserie going. And then I don't know. I thought he was joking when he said this other part that they'd attach it to a dog that would run. And
I think so too. I think he was pulling our leg.
I think he was pulling our leg on that one too. He said they would just go out and find a stray dog and attach it to this pulley system, and the dog would run. And I don't think that's true.
So they had the stove top, and then they had the fireplace, and then they had someplace to bake the bread.
Yeah, they had an oven. And then they also had what he called a barbecue.
Yes.
And it was basically you would just put coals, the fire and coals in kind of like a bin.
Shallow bin.
Like a shallow pan kind of. And below it was a drawer that catch the ashes. And then they had round, one was a grate and one was just like a plate, a steel plate kind of that you would then you could
grill meat
on it, yeah.
Or make pancake kind of things. And something that you could fry with. Yeah. It was interesting.
And what else? They also had a like the scullery where they would wash all the plates and the dishes pots. And it was interesting. The house originally did not have running water or toilets. So they said the whole house ran on
20 jugs of water.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy because there were 11 kids, I think. There were a lot of...
Well, at one time one family had 11 children in that house.
And no running water. And so that means that all the water would have to be brought to the house. And they had these huge copper jugs, one by the fireplace and one on the stovetop for hot water. And the servants would have to bring it up to wherever it was needed in the house. So that was amazing.
But this house was considered quite elegant. I mean, it was at the time very elegant, and that kitchen was very modern.
Yes.
At the time. Very, very, these were luxuries that people didn't have. So that was...
So it was the Georgian house on Charlotte Square.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we went tasting again.
Oh, yes, we went tasting again. So we're interested in this Scotch Malt Whisky Society. And so on Queen Street, 28 Queen Street, is they have a branch of it. There's 2 spots, but this is the one we went to. And because you have to be a member to have a drink there, but at this one they have a bar that's open to the public called Kaleidoscope.
Right, but upstairs they have the members' rooms,
right,
which are more like they have big, comfortable leather couches and that super comfy place too.
We would have liked to have sat there, but anyway, we sat at Kaleidoscope and had a
Maiden Voyage.
Yes, it was called the Maiden Voyage, and it was 3 whiskeys, and the nice guy behind the bar just picked them for us. We sort of talked about what we liked or didn't like, and he picked 3 whiskeys for us. And we said, can we just split the flight? Because they are 25 milliliters.
Yes.
Right? Each one, which I believe is more than an ounce. And so that would have been more than 3 ounces each.
And so they were high proof too. They were not the 40, but
they're just shy of 60.
Yeah.
Right? And so we asked if we could split the flight, which thank God we did.
We were happy walking out.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, it was just it would have been too much. But anyway, they were interesting to try them. We learned a lot too. I did not realize that the proof is they add water. Let's rephrase that. They're high proof, 60 and above, right? And that means that they've not added any water to them. If they're below that, they've actually added water, and to make them consistent, right?
Yeah, I think that it has to be over 40 to be a Scotch whiskey, but it can't be over 70. And so what they do is they make them between 55 to 65, and to bring them closer to the 40, they put water in them.
Yeah. I never knew that.
Yeah. Whereas if you buy a single, and that's for vat, single malts, but if you buy a single cask of single malt, then they generally have higher proofs because they believe that the person doing the drinking should decide how much water to put in.
Yeah.
And that's what we had today. And so the flavors were amazing. And some of them needed 2 or 3 drops of water, and some of them needed, a lot more than that.
Yeah. And it was kind of cool because they had, on the table, they had a glass jug, a little glass pitcher with water in it, and a little eyedropper.
Yes.
So I
wouldn't say it was a little eyedropper, actually. It was
a big eyedropper, but it was an eyedropper nonetheless. Yes. So it was, and it really is, it's interesting how it does make a difference adding just that little bit of water. Kind of opens up the Scotch.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then we got home and got back to the hotel and made the mistake of laying on our beds. And then about 7:30 went, oh my God, we have to get up. So we got up and we went over to, it's called Wagamama.
Yeah.
Wagamama.
We may be pronouncing that wrong.
Yeah, but it's a chain that has kind of Asian fusion food, and we just had some shrimp and split a salad. And then we came back to the hotel, and we sat in our hotel and sat in the lounge, and I had a beer, and Kim had a glass of wine, and we had a nice conversation with a Norwegian couple.
And we knew that she was a knitter by her sweater. Yes,
so I walked into the room and I saw her sweater, and I knew exactly what it was. It's the Sunset Highway, and it's that interesting colorwork sweater that says sort of, I don't know, a lot of people are doing it in tonals. So instead of just solid yarns, they're doing kind of tonals, and hers was a beautiful rusts and maroons and purples. She had really nice colors in her sweater. So we had a nice conversation with them about knitting and Norway and the festival and driving on the
different
side of the road. Yes. And we had a nice time. So, and then is that everything today?
That was today. Well, I finished something.
Oh, yes. Big celebratory. We need to have a bottle of champagne.
I've been working on this airplane scarf for, it's like the project that it's perfect to take traveling, and you can pick it up and set it down, and you don't have to finish a row or anything. But it was lace weight silk mohair from Art Fibers in San Francisco, which shows you it was from my stash. And I was knitting away, and I looked at it, I was like, yay, I get to bind off. So I finished a scarf.
Yeah.
A nice, warm silk mohair. It's a really deep, dark green spruce color. So it's a beautiful color. It'll be nice to have it here in Edinburgh.
Yeah, it's nice. And then you've been working on your skirt, too.
Yes. I am knitting this again so the scarf that I finished is the airplane scarf from Church Mouse, and that this is just the plain knitted skirt from Church Mouse. And I'm really enjoying it. It's all stockinette. It's going to be a good social project.
Yeah. So with that, I think it's around 11:30 at night now.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we probably should go to bed.
Yeah. Signing off.
Sign off, yeah. So we're going to sign off. That's our second dispatch from Edinburgh, Scotland. And
good night.
We'll be back in 2 days. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. To subscribe to the podcast, visit 2usfiberadventures.com. We have links for iTunes, Google Play Music, YouTube, and others.
Join us on our adventures on Ravelry and Instagram. I am Better in Motion, and Kelly is 100 Projects.
Until next time, we're the 2 U's.
Doing our part for world fleece.